ABC News senior congressional correspondent Rachel Scott joins me now, along with host of the 538 Politics podcast, Galen Druke, for more on this. Rachel, these private concerns among Democrats, they're now turning into public concerns, it seems like. What are Democratic leaders telling you?
I just got off the phone with one Democrat about 10 minutes ago, and they described what they said is pure panic that is playing out in the party right now. They said this is far from a kumbaya moment, that there's real concern and real questions about the president's path forward and also questions about his mental fitness. And many are looking at just sort of the change in tone over the last few days. The idea that allies, the closest allies to President Biden, would be validating these questions, calling them legitimate, and also entertaining questions about Vice President Kamala Harris possibly stepping in is something that was unthinkable in the party like maybe a year ago, that they would have never said publicly. So it does mark a change in tone, which is evident, obviously, of more and more Democrats not only coming out to raise concern, but also the first Democrat lawmaker coming out and saying that the president should step aside, Diane.
Galen, the president has said that it's the people's opinion that matters. So what are the polls telling you about that? How big of an issue is this for the president?
In the head-to-head between Trump and Biden post-debate, we've seen Trump improve his standing nationally by about 2 percentage points. But there are other questions that pollsters are asking as well, which is, for example, do you think that President Biden is fit for a second term, or do you think he's too old to be effective? And in questions like that, we see that a majority of Americans, but also frequently a majority of Democrats, say yes. And the way that this ties into what Rachel is talking about and how politicians, Democratic politicians, are reacting to this is something similar that we've seen during the Trump era, which is, journalists will ask Republican lawmakers, did you see the tweet? Did you see the norm-breaking behavior? Did you see the thing he said? And oftentimes, Republicans who broke with then-President Trump would end up getting back in line, and we would see that Trump sort of had control over the party. There's a real big difference here, which is that in those situations, Republican voters were basically always with Trump. And the Republican lawmakers who broke with Trump were in some ways breaking with the voters. In this situation, the voters are out here first, and they have been saying for years, actually, Democratic voters have been saying for years that they think Biden is too old to serve a second term as president. And so the people, the Democratic lawmakers that we see coming out now and saying so, a limited number saying so, are actually now putting themselves in line with Democratic voters.
Interesting. Rachel, President Biden is having lunch with Vice President Harris today before he meets with Democratic governors. What are you watching for there?
This is going to be a lot of damage control over the next, I would say, 72 hours in terms of President Biden. It's not only the fact that he's going to be meeting with the vice president today, having this lunch. It's also the fact that we know that there is a White House staff call that's going to happen today, where we're told that the message will likely be, stay focused on the work, put your head down. The president has also started to have conversations with lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Remember, it has been days since the president has spoken to leaders like Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, the two top leaders in the Democratic Party on Capitol Hill, Nancy Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, two of his very close allies. We are told that the president has started to make these calls now to congressional allies. How those conversations play out will definitely be indicative of the path forward. But of course, many of those lawmakers have been acknowledging very publicly that they are frustrated, obviously, by how things played out on the debate stage. There is some level of concern there, although the closest allies to President Biden are still standing behind him, backing him, saying that he does have the best shot going forward.
All right, Galen Druke, Rachel Scott, thank you both. And GMA anchor George Stephanopoulos will be sitting down with President Biden on Friday for his first television interview since the debate. It will air across ABC News programs and platforms with an extended interview Sunday on This Week.